Shana Tova. Take a second and think about the last time someone tried to set you up. Could have been for a romantic engagement, business deal, or maybe it was just to have you meet a friend. They may have told you, oh, you two have a lot in common. I'm sure you'll just hit it right off. Now take a second and think about what was going on in your head when you were tried to be set up. There was probably some nervousness, some hesitation, maybe a little anxiety, maybe even a little excitement. But I'm guessing you also had this thought. This had better be worth my time. In fact, I'm guessing that many of you are having that exact thought right now. I was set up in 8th grade. She's one of those that everybody has an opinion about because everyone thinks they know her, but in reality, her true self is elusive and shrouded in complexity. I'd known about her for a while, but when we first met, I knew that there was going to be a special connection between us. She elevated my spirit like none other. Being in her presence made me a better person and actually deepened my connection to my history and my Jewishness. And she did something I didn't think was possible. When conflict abounded, she gave me hope. When we parted that first time, all I could think about was when we could get together again. She really stuck with me. As our relationship has grown and deepened, I have discovered that I'm actually not the only one who feels this way about her. In fact, I'm guessing that you too have a relationship with Israel. You were probably set up the same way that I was. Israel is this wonderful place where they turned the desert green, and they invented chat rooms, and they have more Nobel laureates per capita than anywhere else in the world. And did you know they invented Waze? Israel is our homeland. Israel represents the best of our ideals. The people of Israel are our people. And this is often how we think about Israel. It has to be perfect. Now that thought in and of itself is fine, but it is antithetical to our values when we say Israel has to be perfect, and if your idea of Israel's perfection is different from mine, you're wrong. I want to pause for a second just to name what's happening. The student rabbi who has never preached about anything controversial is bringing up a topic that could cost him substantial congregational goodwill, divide the community, and ruin your Yom Kippur. But by sharing my Israel, I hope that I will elevate your Yom Kippur, unite our community, and have you join me on a journey of deepening our relationships with Israel. I'm guessing that even when I first said the word Israel, you probably had a thought along the lines of, okay, here we go. I know where I stand, thank you very much. What I'm going to tell you is difficult. It will be difficult for me to say. It may be difficult for you to hear. And that is exactly why it is important. Yom Kippur is held in a different place in each of our hearts. And so too does Israel. Each of us as Jews has a unique, special relationship. Some of you may feel an intense connection to Israel. Some may feel a very minimal connection to Israel. Some of you may consider the Prime Minister of Israel as the public face of all Jewry. And some of you may have been very disappointed with the racist tactics used in the most recent election for Prime Minister. And it's okay to feel such differences. There are many voices when it comes to Israel, and it's natural for them to be in conflict. And it's also okay to engage in that struggle. Indeed, the word Israel, Yisrael, has struggle baked into it. The word Yisrael means one who struggles with God. Although I do admit that at times I do not feel a part of Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, the people who struggle with God, so much as a part of Am Yisrael, the people who struggle with the nation of Israel. I will also admit that at times the divide between the right and the left in the American Jewish community and the Israeli community exacerbates that struggle. But there are many out there who will tell you otherwise. We are up against a narrative that says, if you're struggling in your relationship with Israel, you don't care about Israel. And too often, we let that fear win. Too often, we're too intimidated to speak up, so we say nothing. Too often, we're hesitant of our personal connection to Israel, that it's not deep enough, that it's rooted in complex stories, that someone might feel differently, that it brings up a lot of emotion. So instead of leaning in and engaging with our Israel narratives, our Israel stories, these issues, in a safe way, we simply stay silent. We don't make the effort to learn and discuss and embrace the differences among us. It's not enough to say, well, the Torah says this, or I'm Jewish, so I believe that. Whereas 20th century Israel narratives were about the preservation of Jewish life, I argue that 21st century Israel narratives are about accepting the diversity in our narratives and finding places of mutuality and common ground. Your narrative is your story. No one else can tell your story as authentically as you. And you alone are in control of that story. I want to tell you a bit about my own Israel narrative. The year I started rabbinical school, Sarah and I lived in Israel. It was the first time that I had been there for an extended period of time, and fortunately there was relative calm between Israel and her neighbors, which actually meant that Israelis were able to look inward and take a look at some domestic issues. Sarah and I attended protests and rallies for issues such as the price of cottage cheese and the rising cost of raising a family. We saw Gilad Shalit come home. And in the joy and the palpable euphoria of our boy, our soldier, coming home, I still had to grapple with the question, how many released prisoners is one life worth? These past few summers, though, it has become harder and harder to tell my Israel story, my Israel narrative, particularly because it has become more complex. The war with Gaza last summer and the debate surrounding this P5+1 deal with Iran have made me thoughtfully reevaluate my Israel narrative. What is my connection to Israel today? Is my connection the mere engagement in the day's news? Or is there something else? Something deeper? In asking myself those challenging questions, I was able to see how Israel plays an important role in my life and my Jewish identity. My connection to Israel is about learning and thinking through its myriad complexities in order to elevate what I do here with you, in this community. I felt a pain in my stomach just this weekend when my Tzeva Adom Red Alert app told me that a rocket had been fired from Gaza into Israel. I felt incredible anguish during last year's war with Gaza as Palestinians were using human shields to hide their munitions-filled schools. But then there are times I'm really not sure what to feel. For example, during the debate around the Iran deal, I struggled with whether I should support it. At first, I did support it. Then I was against it. Then I was for it. Then I was against it. And it went back and forth like this on almost a daily and honestly sometimes almost an hourly basis. But in that uncertainty, I listened to both sides. I learned and I sought out resources. Where before I might have publicly announced my position, in going through this process of reflection and learning, I actually realized that a cornerstone of my Israel narrative is about building community and bridging the gaps that divide us. Taking a side on this issue would have done neither of those things. So instead, I encourage this community to engage in healthy debate with a respectful tenor. When the dust of this and other debates settles, my connection to Israel adds a spiritual depth to my engagement with Judaism and the Jewish people. Israel gives me hope. Hope that we can make a better world. Israel is important for us today because, let's face it, in our community full of differences, Israel gives us something to point to and say, that's ours. Having a connection to Israel and developing an Israel identity are integral parts to what it means to be a Jew. Indeed, when we consider what it means to be Jewish, the categories we often use are God, Torah, and Israel. To be a Jew means to connect to Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel, a Jewish, sovereign, democratic state that, on its best days, lives out our shared Jewish values. To be a Jew means to connect to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, a small piece of land that is the spiritual, religious, and political birthplace of our people. To be a Jew means to connect to Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, the Jewish people, wherever they live. When the rabbis of the Talmud said, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, all of Israel is responsible for one another, they are imploring us to care about Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. Indeed, just as much as we need a homeland to exist in Israel for us, Israel needs us to be its partners all over the world, wherever we live. So, when things do get complex about Israel, and let's face it, they always do, how do we make sense of these conflicts? How can we approach our understanding of history and current events in an intellectual and analytical way? What questions do we need to ask as we encounter differing perspectives? As I have developed my own narrative, I have learned that these critical thinking skills are even more important. It is daunting to dive in and swim in this sea of complexities. But it is sacred work, and it will pay dividends to your soul. If your connection to Israel manifests itself not by debating the speed of snapback sanctions in Iran, but by tearing up when you hear Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, that's okay too. Yet, accepting the existence of nuance. Now, I'm going to say this twice because it's maybe the most important point I'm going to make today. Accepting the existence of nuance in your understanding of the people, culture, and land and state of Israel will actually add vibrancy to your relationship with Israel. I hope that relationship didn't stop when you finished Hebrew school. We should be empowered to continue that sophisticated relationship with Israel throughout our lives, because as we gain life experience, we can engage each other in conversations about Israel with the goal of deepening our Israel narratives. Coming to terms with Israel's imperfections is not easy. But as we enter this new year, let us commit to having the important, albeit sometimes difficult, conversations about Israel without compromising our connection to nor love for Israel. Let us commit to engaging with Israel within the shades of gray rather than seeing only black and white. Let us commit to exploring our relationship with Israel, understanding that it's not perfect, but it is an important and essential element for us as Jewish Americans. And let me commit that to you. Last night, as we sang Kol Nidre, we let go of our vows from the previous year. This morning, my vow to you is this. This year, I will work with you to facilitate opportunities for you to deliberate and effectively engage with Israel so that you can create and adapt your Israel narrative. I vow to enfranchise you to create and deepen your relationship with Israel and provide the necessary resources for you to find meaning. Let your new voice for Israel, rise. I commit to you that I will lead as the reform movement led with the Iran deal. I'm not going to tell you what to choose, but I will give you the resources and tools so that you can make your choice. But I have to ask something of you too. Play a role in that relationship. Go out on a limb. Reflect on your relationship with Israel and participate in that conversation. In fact, the first of our conversations will be happening in just about a month. Over the summer, I shot a documentary in Israel about HUC-JIR. I went around the country and asked Israelis how they felt about the song, the words, and its music. And we talked about the challenge that it poses. HUC-JIR speaks of a Jewish soul, a nefesh Yehudi, but it's very difficult for the 20% of the population who are not Jewish to feel a connection to those words. I asked them how they felt about the song, and I asked them how they felt about using different words in the song. And then I showed them an alternative version of HUC-JIR that uses more universal language. Now I'll remind you that this is Harmony Gold Preview House, so I'm not going to give away the whole film, but I do hope that you'll join me on October 24th for the world premiere screening of HUC-JIR at Colony, followed by a facilitated discussion where you will have the chance to explore some of the same questions I posed to those in the film. Look, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat this. Developing an Israel narrative is hard. It's difficult, and it may tap into something really uncomfortable. You too may end up identifying with Yisrael, the people who struggle with the state of Israel. But it can be done, and it can be done with compassion and kindness. Think back to when I first said the word Israel. What came up for you? Was it an issue of security? Was it an image of our homeland? I challenge you to explore what came up and take action. Maybe you'll join us at the APAC Policy Conference or a J Street convention. Maybe you'll travel to Israel. Or maybe you'll take a week and read the top article every morning on the Times of Israel and discuss it with a friend. Yom Kippur is a time of teshuvah, repentance, forgiveness, turning over a new leaf. Indeed, in the words of Ashamnu, we list things that we individually and communally have done wrong. We scorn, we are cruel, we slander, we ridicule, we abuse, we are hostile, we're stubborn. How often do those wrongs make their way into our conversations about Israel? For all these failures of judgment and will, let us commit to having a sense of acceptance and understanding. In Pirkei Avot, the teachings of our ancestors, Rabbi Akiva teaches us everyone is given free will, but the world is judged in goodness, and all is according to the majority of deeds. Keep that in mind as you develop your Israel story. Your story is yours alone. That's your free will. But we are judged based on the majority of our actions, so please engage in goodness and decency. It's been a long time since I was in 8th grade and first met Israel face to face. Take a second and think about those closest to you. How were they introduced to you? Were they presented as being perfect? Now that you've known them for some time, how do you grapple with their imperfections? How do you overcome those challenges? We love who we love because they bring out the best in us. They bring us joy and companionship. And it can be the same when it comes to our relationship with Israel. And that, my friends, is how we can bring about peace in our day. No one said it'd be easy, but we still have to try. This is our time, this is our fate. We must stand up before it's too late. We need salam achshav. This is our chance, this is our voice. We have no other choice. Salam achshav. We turn another page and say we'll take some action. If everyone wants peace, then we've gotta let it happen. This is what we have got to give. This is what we live. This is our time, this is our fate. We must stand up before it's too late. We need salam achshav. This is our chance, this is our voice. We have no other choice. Salam achshav. If we put our differences aside, if we find our common ground,